Trump is doubling down that in this picture here, the letters MS and the numbers 1-3 are actual tattoos in size 12 Arial font. Just watch this.
He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattoo.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey,
And you know what? I'll admit it. Back when it happened, I was thinking, you know what? Maybe the conservatives do have a point and the Democrats are being dramatic, because surely nobody would look at that picture and mistake that very obvious MS paint for a legitimate tattoo. But once again, this just goes to show that no matter how bad I think it is, it's actually much worse. I mean, geez, we're having this conversation about how boomers can't identify AI. No. They can't even identify MS paint. MAGA supporters genuinely believe that the letter MS-13 is a real tattoo in this picture. You guys are crazy.
Thanks, Sydney, for that video. As you can see, guys, the president, he's really diving into this deportation policy. And Kilmore Garcia is the actual subject that, everybody's talking about, whether he is a MS-13 member or he's affiliated with the gang. So there is a picture that the president put up, and Dan has a bunch of tattoos on it. Now you see the numbers, MS-13. Now, looking at this particular, it's very obvious to me that it is Photoshop. It looks like a Photoshop MS-13, right? So the person who was conducting the interview with the president was explaining, sir, the Photoshop. For me, when it comes down to this particular idea of deportation about hardest criminals, I'm one who's for that. If we got a person who continually has committed crimes, he's in and out of prison over and over again, he's just a menace to society, and he's our most violent, my view is to make our community safe. This is what we got to do. He works out a deal and he wants to send our most violent to another country. Look, I'm all for that. That's just my opinion. When it comes down to the whole idea of sending our most violent to protect our community. Now, there is a lot of question or conversation going around about there is a lot of, or a few members that has been deported that's not been vetted as our most violent. Now, when it comes down to that, I strongly believe if we're going to send somebody to another country, we should have enough evidence to support that person being that violent. If he's a menace to society, has a record a mile long, I'm all for that. Let's send him. But if we're not going through the due process or the steps to make sure that the person that we are sending over is not fall under that category, then yeah, there's something. It's always bad when you have a great idea and it's not executed properly. You're like, just not to go off saying, I think stop and frisk was an excellent tool. Used correctly, I've used it, and I've used it correctly. Never had a problem, never had complaints on it, never cost taxpayers no money, never violated nobody's rights. There's a whole criteria on how to use stop and frisk. Now, this whole deportation thing, I think it's a good idea, but if it's not being used correctly, then it's a bad idea. Just dive right in if you want.
All right, I'll tell you what, one thing, I'm going to go out on a limb here. That was not a Photoshop. That was an annotation. I think someone handed the president a picture because on his knuckles, you have tats. And I think it was kind of an interpretation, like this tat means N, M, this is S, this is the 1 and the 3. So that wasn't a Photoshop, like someone just handed and faked it. That was someone saying, this is the photo, and here's the annotation as to what each tattoo means. And I don't think the president picked up on it. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it, and I've heard that elsewhere. With respect to due process, you're exactly correct. But with respect to people who are here illegally, their level of due process is not the same as an American citizen or a green card holder. That's just a fact. They get some due process, and it varies. So if you're, for example, if you're within 100 miles of the border and within 2 weeks of entry, your level of due process is far lower than someone who's lived here in the community for 15 years. And it just and many of these people have final deportation orders. Many of these people have deportation orders subsequent to criminal arrest or conviction. And it's kind of it's kind of tough when you're deporting so many people. You're going to get some of these things like Abrego Garcia, where they just missed a hold order on the guy. But to argue that this guy was not a bad actor who we don't want in this country, that's where I draw the line. I mean, these guys are going out on a limb. They're visiting him. They're having like margaritas in the jail with the guy. He's a bad guy. He's a wife beater. He's a criminal. He needs to go.
I agree. Now,
Mitch,
So I have a slightly different take. I disagree with the two panel members here. One, if we're saying that the MS tattoo on his knuckles is an interpretation of the other tattoos that's on his knuckles, that's what should have been presented. And then how do we verify that? That wasn't presented to the audience or to the media. It was saying that these are actual tattoos. MS-13 is an actual tattoo on his knuckles, and that was presented. I think in law enforcement, I don't think it's never a good idea to insert fake or manipulated evidence of any crime, of any suspect. And so if he's truly a violent criminal, then let's present his violent criminal history. There's no need to present Photoshop tattoos on his knuckles. Just because, in addition to that, he may have had a checkered past, that doesn't mean he's not entitled to due process. His wife forgiving him for whatever domestic dispute they may have, that's not for us to say we should take away his due process and deport him to another country, even at the defiance of a Supreme Court judge ruling. So I disagree across the board on that.
yeah, well, I think the
Wow.
interviewer himself,
No.
the interviewer himself clarified that to the president and said it doesn't say MS-13, with letters, but it does indicate gang activity. He agreed with that, and the guy is a bad apple. And
I've seen that
if he's
a couple
illegal,
times. The interviewer never said that.
legal.
That is,
hold on.
If he's here illegally, in itself, that's enough.
Go ahead.
But he's a very violent guy. Even the interviewer told the president, "Look, I agree. The tattoos are indicative of gang membership. So,
that's not what I heard.
Yeah, but they got a lot more than tattoos. We're not deporting him because he's got tattoos.
Hold on. Let's give each other a chance to talk. Just don't talk over each other. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Let Dave go. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
David.
Me? Okay. So yeah, he's not being deported because he has tattoos. He's being deported because he's still engaged in criminal activity. He's being deported because local police have identified. They identify him as a MS-13 member. They identify his rank and his gang name. He's stopped during a human trafficking investigation. He's beaten his wife, according to all reports, severely to the point where she was terrified. Yeah, sure. Now she's getting a lot of pressure. I have no doubt to say, listen, I recant and all is well. I can't wait to have him back. But that doesn't matter. She doesn't get to make that call. If he is here in this country, he's here illegally, and he's still involved in criminal activity, he goes. You don't have a right to be in this country. You just have a right to be heard, which apparently he was. There was an error with there was do not deport because he was in fear of his life. If reports are correct about why he was in fear, he basically said, because there's a rival gang that wants to kill me.
Go ahead, Tom.
Now is this the gentleman that was, and I use that word loosely, gentleman, but was this the individual that was his wife? He was a citizen because his wife is an American, and they have a child in this country. No, this is something different.
That is him. His wife's a citizen.
But he
had married her and had a child in the country.
Okay,
He's not
the problem, right? The problem is the 14th Amendment, due process. None of us here, not even the president, know anything about what happened. They didn't take pictures of the knuckles. They didn't do the investigation. But if we had due process, we would know fact. The 14th Amendment, right? Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. We talk about habeas corpus. That means that the government, they can seize you, but the government has to prove that you're bad. You just can't scoop somebody up and send them away. I'd like to see a picture of the knuckles. I want to hear from the investigator who investigated that this individual's bad. I want to see the criminal record. A judge needs to see this and make a determination, not just some word of mouth and just send them off to another country. So, unbelievable. I agree with Mitch.
Is he legal or is he illegal, Tone?
If the 14th Amendment would tell us that.
No, is he legal or illegal?
The 14th Amendment would tell us that. Let's see his card. Let's see his paperwork. Let's see everything.
I think
Well, we
they
know
made
he's here
that
illegally.
determination that he's illegal.
That's not,
Who made that
criminal.
determination? Who made that determination? He was shipped away and gone. We don't know
several courts.
nothing. All you know is what they tell you.
He was given a stay order, and the Supreme Court
No,
ruled.
that's not true. There are court
conservative-
records,
a
there's
conservative
police
panel.
records, there are police reports that have been released.
A conservative panel Supreme Court judge ruled that it was a stay order. Even if you're illegal, you're still entitled to due process. You cannot break the law.
Disagree with that.
That's the only thing
The
correct about
14th
this
Amendment
whole
says
incident.
you
There
are
was a stay
entitled to
order.
due process.
You cannot break the law because someone else breaks the law, right? And so, even if he's illegal, go through the process and properly and legally deport him.
Okay, but you're missing the very first thing you're saying. Even if he's illegal, even though he's here illegally, which means he's broken the law. He's broken the law. You just said he's here illegally. He's broken the law. I think that's established. Therefore, you have enough grounds to deport him. That's just the fact.
Right. But
If that's the case, right? If that's the case, listen. If that's the case, why did Greg Abbott in Texas bus and ship a bunch of people all over to cities? Why don't you just send them back? In fact, he's the problem because he let people come into this country who were not vetted. So now you let criminals, the so-called criminals, come into this country.
Yeah, I think you need to understand. He shipped them to liberal cities.
No. You said they're here illegally. Don't ship them nowhere. Send them back. That's what you're saying.
Hold on.
You can't ship
Under Biden,
Leave him in your jurisdiction.
He didn't want to send them back.
You can't ship
No,
illegal
hold on,
because
hold on.
you want to make it political. If you're in the business of arresting.
How does Greg Abbott get involved in
That
this
is
guy?
correct.
Just because
There's nothing to do with this guy.
whether you robbing a bank or you commit a murder, right, and someone breaks the law, is no different. The law is the law. You cannot break the law to enforce the law. We have without laws and a constitution and due process, that makes us no different than any other country.
He had
America.
He had due process.
He did not have due process.
Yes, he
didn't.
guys,
No, he didn't. No,
guys,
he didn't.
guys, hang on a second.
No, he didn't.
Tony, may I? So the only issue here, there is no other issue whether he has a criminal background or not, or whether he is here illegal. That's already been adjudicated. That's you can go online right now and read court orders, read the investigative reports. It's all available. What the issue is, the administration did not or deported him, even though there was a hold order. That hold order should have been litigated and then ultimately released because the hold order was just nonsensical. But don't conflate the two issues. It's established he's here illegally. It's established that he's
you have to establish the deportation, the legal right to deport. You have to go through the process. I'm not sure why we're afraid to go through the process. If he's such a bad actor and he's so illegal and he has tattoos, just go through the process and he would be deported.
Yeah, and the only issue is, was he going to be deported now or a month from now? That guy was getting deported. So What should have happened is he should have been held. He should have been held in immigration custody. It should have been litigated. That hold order should have been vacated, and he should have been deported. So that.
So when you say
correct.
litigated, you talk about due process. When you say David, when you say litigated, you talk about
only issue, Tony. Only. Yeah, but Tony. Due process on that issue only. He's going either way. The mistake was they deported him without that.
Okay, but my thing, right? Chris was saying, look, once he steps his foot into the country, he's here illegally. Send him back. He's justifying send him back.
That's true.
If that's the case, I'm just saying Greg Abbott could have done that when they came across. You're here illegally.
No, he couldn't.
Guess what? I'm driving your ass back.
Wait, time. No, the state has zero power to send anyone across the border. In fact, the Biden administration prevented Texas from doing that.
They turn them over to ICE. They turn these criminals or illegals over to ICE, and then they do the deportation.
Who wouldn't take them under the Biden administration? Exactly correct.
But I just don't understand the simple concept that if somebody breaks the law, that we're saying that it's okay for us to break the law.
We're not saying that.
That's what we essentially are saying.
No, we're not saying that.
We're saying that.
We're not saying that.
We're trying to skip the process of due process. The guy had a stay order. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 to bring this illegal person back, this gentleman back, and Donald Trump, the president, defied the Supreme Court order.
Also not correct.
What's not correct?
Because once you're correct up until the point where he was sent back and that stay order, the hold order was not followed. Once he's in El Salvador, well, now you got a foreign country. Now it's the State Department. Send El Salvador, please send him back. Now by the way, El Salvador wants him in jail, just so you know. They know who he is, they know his background, they're holding him. So at that, at this point, it's up to them.
Well, El Salvador wants more support and money from the United States, so that's your opinion on that. It will march to whatever beat that Donald Trump says. But we're still talking about the concept. You cannot illegally kidnap somebody, send them to another country, and skip the entire process. If it happens to him, it can happen to anyone.
No,
we're talking about the Constitution, due process, American values, and American traditions. We should all be standing, especially in law enforcement, because you guys deal with criminals all day and every day. And I would like to think that you follow your standard procedures of following law and following the way that you do business.
Yeah, not all cops do. Sorry, not all cops do.
You're right, with except.
Hey, Dave, let me ask you a question, Dave. Right, because it sounds like you just made a strong argument and exactly laid out what due process should have applied to.
Yes.
It sounds like you just laid it out.
Yeah, it's exactly right. He should have been held. He should have been, or that issue should have been litigated. Then he should have been deported. But
okay, so
but the reason this is such a ridiculous,
you would disagree with Chris of just sending him back because he's illegal, because he didn't go through the process that you just described.
Yeah, you can't ignore due process. What I'm saying is he got a lot of due process. He should have been kicked out.
All documented.
Yeah, exactly. All documented. He should have been kicked out a long time ago. To make this guy the poster boy for the 14th Amendment violation, that is I'm just sorry on that one. Just find someone who might have actually been innocent.
I'm going to steal your poster boy comment.
As far as whether he was innocent or how bad he was, the question for me as law enforcement, and did he get his actual rights of due process? And according to what you just described, he did not. You just said it should have been this way. If it had been this way, then none of us here would have a problem with it.
No, I don't know. I think a few of us might still have a problem. I'm just catching that. So understand my point exactly. He's gotten due process to the point where he should have been locked up and held pending deportation. I don't know what happened. Administrative error. No, I don't think there was a deliberate. Well, there's a court order. Just the heck with that. I don't think that happened. I think they're deporting thousands of people now.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't agree with that.
Right, we all can agree if he is exactly what we're getting, because we don't have the case file, we don't know. Does anybody know? Has he been convicted of domestic violence? Because I looked and I haven't seen
He has
any.
not.
You
He
don't
has
you
not
don't
been.
need you don't by the
He
way,
has.
you don't need a conviction. You need to show moral turpitude, for example. You don't need to have a criminal conviction. So if someone
No,
comes into this country and you're a bad actor, we could just say, sorry, you're not coming in.
But he
Yeah,
wasn't
so no,
convicted.
no. Let me ask you something. So who says that
Wow.
he has a history
If he wasn't
of
convicted, how would we know if he was guilty of domestic violence?
right,
well,
right,
here's the
right?
thing. Here's the thing, and I run into this a lot, and especially where I live in Dalton, Georgia, made national news where the little Hispanic girl that got deported, and they showed her picture of her and her class where she graduated high school. She'd been here since she was 4, still illegal, and they deported her, and then they ended up deporting her whole family. But not to get on that case, but to go back, they are deporting people. If you get arrested for a crime and they determine immigration or ICE, they determine that you're here illegally and you've been arrested for a crime, they are deporting you. Okay, they
They
are
are
deporting you.
deporting you,
You
but
don't
you
go
did
to court.
nothing.
You don't go. You're not going.
This is
They're not holding you till you go to court.
No, it's not. Okay, this is where you're not getting it. This is where you're not getting it. No one has a right to be in this country. They could, Garcia could have done nothing,
Thank you.
nothing at all. And they could have said, you're here illegally, you're gone. So
But that's I don't
Right,
think
but
that's
due,
but
anybody.
due,
but
due,
that's why he.
due,
But
due process.
he's already
Due
went through the
process.
process. That's why he has a stay order.
Due process.
According to what you described, it wasn't done correctly.
I
According
just
to what you
kind of mixed it.
described, David, it wasn't done correctly.
Yeah, just the last, showing the guy the door was
The
not
last
done
little
correctly.
bit.
But just make no mistake, but this guy was going regardless. So, and I'm not saying it was not done incorrectly. It was done incorrectly. What I'm saying is to make this guy like we're going to rally around him, a wife
The
beater.
poster boy.
Yeah, I mean this is just that's
Right,
just
because
that's just
we're
insanity.
talking about due process and the importance of due process. And sometimes not everybody's going to represent the perfect example of whatever topic we're talking about. He may not be, a class act guy that you guys may think he is or he is not. But we're talking about the principle of due process, and he should have it all the way up to 100% of the process.
That's not
It
true.
should be, it should be
He's not true.
95.
He's
It
not.
should be 97. It should
He's
be
not.
90%.
No.
And
He's
so,
not entitled to that. Look, illegal aliens have, compared to you've got 100% due process. Illegal aliens, depending on where they are, what they've done, their status, it's a lot lower standard. There's
that's not in the
expedited
Constitution.
removal.
That's not in the Constitution.
Time out. Wait a second.
The Constitution doesn't speak whether you're a citizen or illegal. You get entitled to due process or not. Due process is spelled out in the 14th Amendment very clearly.
And there are exceptions to due process. For example, the Alien Enemies Act is an exception to due process. Period. There's no argument about that.
Okay, but
that's
didn't apply to the aliens enemy.
Why
act.
not? Why not? The president has said MS-13, Tren de Agua, they're foreign terrorist organizations.
Right, and then now the president of the United States photographed MS-13 tattoos on his knuckles. That is not correct.
But that's not why.
Correct.
That's not how they established he was MS-13.
How they established it? Because he went before a Supreme Court judge. The judge actually gave him the stay order was a Republican judge that says he had no ties. He felt like
that's not true.
This guy,
that's completely untrue.
If you read the case, the judge felt like he had no ties and that he was not a gang member. Read the case. That's what the judge determined.
And I've also seen other documents showing clearly that they have well-documented intelligence on this particular guy. I think it was Prince George's County, Maryland, if I'm not mistaken, identifying this guy as a member of MS-13. He stopped during a human trafficking investigation.
He was in a van with several people. That doesn't establish that he was in a gang. And so he went before a judge, and a judge ruled. Yeah. Sometimes when judges rule or courts rule, it may not be in our favor. We may dislike it, but a judge ruled that this guy has a stay order and he's not a member of the gang.
No, he did not say he's not a member of the gang. Show me that. There is a stay order.
He did not determine that he was a gang member.
The reason he gave for not for being in fear of going to El Salvador, which was the basis for the stay order, was that a rival gang wanted to kill him. Well, how does that work?
Okay, so a rival gang could kill you if you're just a civilian.
But that's not what it said.
It doesn't
Not what
mean
it
that you.
means.
That's not what it
doesn't
said.
mean it doesn't mean that you yourself are in the gang. You can have other members. There's all kind of underlying circumstances. That's why due process is important. We
But
can't
that's
make
not what it
assumptions,
says.
and
What it
it's
said
very
was,
important, and it's very important to note that to photograph MS-13 tattoos on this gentleman, right, is illegal. That is
that's not what they
tainting.
did.
That is tainting the media. That is tainting the judges. That is tainting the courts, and that is tainting the image of the case.
That is
Well,
not.
but I
If
think
you truly felt like he was MS-13, just prove your case, and you don't have to photograph or Photoshop MS-13 tattoos.
It was
I
not
think
Photoshop.
they've proven that. I think they've proven that.
Hey, let me ask you something, Dave. Let me jump in real quick. I've seen and I read some of the reports that you are referring to. I also read reports where the officer stated in the report there is no evidence to tie him to gang activity. I've read that from the same police department where officer said he might be gang affiliated, but I have no concrete evidence to say he's a gang member.
It doesn't,
So-
Joe. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Hold on.
It does matter.
It does. You're not getting it.
I don't think you understand the difference between a
Okay,
gang affiliated
I'm
and
going to try to explain it very simply. He doesn't get to stay under any circumstance. You understand? So he's getting deported. Period. Now they're saying he's gang affiliated. Well, we can't. It doesn't matter. He's going anyway.
Joe, it doesn't matter. He's right.
Then that should have been
He's
presented.
right.
That we're gonna. Then that should have been
It
presented.
doesn't matter.
We're gonna
It doesn't
deport him
matter.
regardless. Instead of saying he's a gang member with the lack of evidence, instead of denying his due process, instead of photoshopping tattoos, you should have, or the government administration should have said, we're just gonna deport him just because. That should have been the basis. But they didn't have. That's not a strong basis. That's why they had to Photoshop this tattoos.
They
That's
didn't
why they had to
Photoshop the
skip the due
tattoo.
process.
You keep saying that they didn't Photoshop a tattoo.
They
I told you
absolutely
what
did.
happened. Okay.
Absolutely, they did. That's not real tattoos.
Joe,
We have
Joe,
to-
you
that's not
guys
real
know, like
tattoos.
when you if you're going to show a photograph of something, and you want to annotate on your photographs, I've done that a million times.
You done that at court? Have you seen that at court before?
Yeah, it's called an annotation.
You seen where they actually painted and photographed
It's
tattoos
not.
on
You keep saying
suspects?
you keep saying painted. You keep
Let me
saying
tell you what-
Photoshop.
It's
That's not
Photoshop.
what it is.
Have you
Hold
seen
on.
a case in court where they Photoshop tattoos on suspects to present a case in court?
They did. Okay, you're not getting it. The
No,
MS-13 is not the
David,
tattoo.
David,
I understand what
David,
you're
hold
saying.
on,
I
hold on.
understand it's an interpretation
David,
of
Yeah.
the tattoo.
Okay, I'm listening.
I'm asking, have you ever seen that they Photoshop interpretations of tattoos on suspects in court?
I've seen
You're missing the
I've seen other annotations on photographs. Yes.
Okay, but
Forget
let me
about
ask
the
you-
Photoshop. Forget about
Let me
the
let me let me ask you something. I get and understand what you're saying, Dave, where you're describing the tattoos, right? The problem that I have with that argument is Mitch is responding to the president's argument. The president was saying it's a tattoo.
I said that part I agree with, but
So it's hard to make you're making the argument for the president, and the presidents have a different argument that you're making.
No,
You're making a different argument.
what
the
I-
president's saying
yeah, I agree.
MS-13 is on this guy's knuckles.
Right. That's what I agree. That's the part I agree with. I think someone handed him, Mr. President, look what we got here for you. And instead of explaining, okay, Mr. President, this tattoo corresponds to that, and that's why we have the M up here, so you know this goes to the M, this goes to the S. Those tattoos, you know the best. If you
How
ask any,
do we know if that's the right interpretation?
This is what you
those
think.
gonna be-
This is what you
because
think.
that's
There's a lot of field work that's went into understanding
no, it's
the
not.
game.
They congressional testimony on that.
I mean, that would be done in a due process. Do we bring in
And-
specialists, gang specialists that can interpret tattoos to interpret
Yes.
MS-13?
Yes.
That process have taken place?
Yes.
Yes.
Where is that? I have seen no
I
reports.
refer you to the congressional hearing. The new DEA administrator Terry Cole was asked that point blank, and he addressed that issue.
And what did he say?
MS-13 tattoos. And by the way, you know who's
I
really
understand.
good.
I understand he's regurgitating
Even
the
the
Okay,
theory,
so it
right?
doesn't matter what
But
he
I'm
says. It
asking
doesn't matter. Okay.
where was this
even the
litigated?
interviewer acknowledged it.
The
Even the
interview did not
interviewer
acknowledge that.
acknowledged it.
The
The
interviewer did
interview
not acknowledge
not
it.
Yes, he did. Yes,
No,
he
he
did.
didn't.
Rewatch the video.
No,
Rewatch the video. He said, "Look, it doesn't say MS-13 as far as an M and an S and a 1-3, but he does have tattoos that indicate MS-13 gang activity." He
okay.
said that.
The
told him
interviewer
no.
can't indicate
And the president
tattoos.
told him no. The president said it's MS-13. He said it's not photo. That's what it says, MS-13. It's amazing,
Right.
right? How
He was
you're
mistaken
arguing
about that. Yes, he was
And,
mistaken.
and the interviewer doesn't add any validation. He's not qualified to interpret what the tattoos meanings are at all.
Well,
Right?
but you don't
This
think
Go
he
to,
has it? You don't think he
report.
gets information? You don't think he gets information
I
from
think look at
these
guys.
court hearings and these
I think
specialists?
if he's an MS-13 member, I think it'd be a lot easier to prove than this.
Yeah.
To
Well,
be
it's proven.
photoshopping and
It's proven.
relying
It's
on Donald
proven.
Trump and an interviewer to validate if he's an MS-13, I think you have a lot more
Oh,
evidence.
okay.
If he truly was an MS-13 member, you would have a lot more evidence. It's a lot easier to come across than this.
Well, I think you
I mean,
stay
this is a
tuned.
big reach.
Stay tuned.
I think Dave summed it up best, where he said, "You as an American or as a foreigner or an immigrant or whatever, you don't have the same rights." And he's exactly right. You could be an American, you could go to January 6th, and you could even kill a cop, and you can go to prison. And guess what? You'll get a pardon by the president. But yet, you with knuckles and tattoos and everything, they'll send your ass
Sure,
right out of here.
there's a
If
direct
it's moral
correlation.
moral
Direct
turpitude, like you
corollary
say,
between those two
more
cases.
Americans would be going. More Proud Boys and more Oath Keepers would be over there.
No.
They'll be in El Salvador more than U.S. citizens.
Hey, this conversation is really good because I think we all are agreeing, right? If you're an immigrant, right, that you got to go if you've been found to be one of the most highly dangerous, right?
Wait, Joe, it's not right.
With this process,
If you're here
that
illegally,
we don't
if you're
agree.
here, okay, look, guys.
We don't agree that the due process, even you, Dave, said that process wasn't done correctly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The president is saying that he has MS-13. You guys are disagreeing with the president of the United States. Dave and Chris are definitely disagreeing
on that issue. Joe, let me ask you a question. Joe, do you think Donald Trump conducted the investigation into this guy when they kicked him out? No, he's being told stuff. He's being told stuff by HSI guys, and they're saying this is how we corroborated, boss. I think someone made a mistake. We should have held him prior to the deportation adjudication. Yes, I agree. But to say like, well, Donald Trump he's the one who picked. Donald Trump ordered him picked up. Donald Trump said manufacture Photoshop the things. And by the way, but you know what I'm saying?
I never said that. I told
no, but I'm saying, but
if they put him back and deported him the correct way, right? I don't think nobody will have a problem with that, right?
Oh, they'll always have a problem with it.
So we're more arguing a technicality, if anything, because everybody is in agreement. If it's illegal and if he's violent, he needs to get out of here. Right. But the problem is it hasn't been established that he's violent, right? Because we have mixed.
That doesn't Joe, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
Illegal.
That's irrelevant.
But the president of the United States is saying different. He's saying, right, we're going to deport our most violent. And this guy is violent. He has tattoos of MS-13 on his knuckles, and that's not accurate. So
that's not.
But
wait, hang on.
Hasn't the president also said that if you're here illegally, you're going to go?
Right.
If you're here illegally, that word in itself.
What do we stand? Where do we stand? Mega Chris said you got to go, no due process, and Mega Dave said you got to have process. Where do we go? Pick us. First thing.
I mean, if you guys feel like he should be deported because it's illegal, then the administration should have presented that. They should allow him to go. He went through due process. It was a stay order. The Supreme Court ruled that he should have been stayed here in the country, and the administration defied that. Now, if you guys were running an
Well, that wait,
administration, you feel like
wait, stop, time out. The Supreme Court did not rule he should have stayed in the country. That was looking
he
at
had
it
a
after
stay
the fact.
order. He had a stay
Yeah,
order.
from
It
a
was a
ju-
stay order.
from a trial judge
Okay,
to
he had a
district
stay
judge.
order to
Right,
bring him
correct.
back. Nine,
But it wasn't the
9-0.
Supreme Court. It was
Correct.
not the Supreme. Okay.
Okay. So I'm not sure why this is even. I think it's very clear. Either we believe in due process or we don't. And we're going through a lot of hypotheticals. And obviously, you painted a picture of what due process looked like, and you're even saying that he didn't get due process.
Well, he
So
did.
he,
He did. He
he
did. They
did
determined
not.
he was here illegally. They did determine he was here illegally. And that in itself, once you make that determination, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? I mean, if you call the police and I decide that, I'm going to, I guess, I'm just going to go onto your property. I don't really give a shit how you feel about it, but I'm going to go on your property and I'm going to squat. I'm going to squat. And you're going to call the police and you're going to go, I don't even know this guy. I don't even know why he's here. He's here on my property illegally. I need him removed. And they're going to say, well, no, there's a process. Okay, you know why there's a process? Because we're both U.S. citizens. But if I'm here illegally and I have no documentation to support it, and they confirm that, guess what? I'm gone. I'm gone. And you want me gone. You don't
Did,
want me squatting on your property.
did they confirm it?
Yes, they did.
He's married to
You act like
he's married to a American citizen
Doesn't matter.
with a kid,
Doesn't
right?
matter.
He has a he went before the judge and asked and started seeking I don't know if he sought asylum or
Yeah.
protection, but he did have a stay order in this country. Why not just honor the stay order?
Okay, so
Let's
play this out.
Go ahead.
Let's play it out. Let's say they grab him and they honor the stay order. Where is he sleeping tonight? He's in jail. He's being held. He's not.
Yes, thank you, taxpayer.
Right, but he's in jail in America with resources
Thank you,
here,
taxpayer.
with his family here. He's not sitting in a jail in El Salvador where he's threatened by a so-called rival gang, where he doesn't have resources. He can't rely on his attorney, his family.
He's in El Salvador, so he's not banging up his wife anymore, too. Is that okay?
That's
Thank
irrelevant.
you,
Is that
American
irrelevant? That's irrelevant.
But that is irrelevant. And again, I mean, we can't judge because we have all made mistakes. We have all done things under the sun before. To say his wife have forgiven him, that's not relevant to the case. That's not relevant to the case. All that matters is what is his immigration status, and do we have the right to deport?
Right.
Yes.
Yes, and yes.
That's
100% right. But Dave, the way you described it, there's some technicalities. The I's wasn't dotted and the T's wasn't crossed.
Exactly
That's
right.
all it boils
Yes,
down to.
correct.
Right. We're not talking about what kind of his character. We're not talking about whether he's a good guy or bad guy. We're talking about did he get his due process? And the way you explained it, Dave, that the I's wasn't dotted, the T's wasn't crossed. So hypothetically, right, we could go grab him, bring him back, dot the I's, cross the T's, and ship him right back out. And he had his process, and life goes on, and nobody will have a problem with it.
That's the way it would work out, except for the American taxpayer would carry that burden of that cost and expense for the redundancy of seeing it take place again. And heaven forbid we bring him back. And he decides, I've got chest pains or something like that. Then the American taxpayer has to pay all his medical expenses while he's here.
And so did his family. His family paid taxes. We're actually paying El Salvador we're actually paying El Salvador to take in these criminals. Right? We're actually paying a stipend to deport to illegal.
We're sending them back.
Chris, right?
So we coming up all kind of hypotheticals to justify taking away his due process. He's not the perfect person, I guess, to make this argument, but still, we're talking about the concept of due process, which is something special that no other country really has.
Yeah, no,
I think if
that's part of the problem.
I'm not sure of your political stance, but whether you're Republican or Democratic, you should say, look, this is what makes America special.
Yeah, no,
That's what makes America special.
and on that, I'm in agreement with you. Just one thing you have to understand is that if you're here illegally, you are not entitled to the same level of due process that an
It
American
depends.
citizen or resident. No.
It depends.
There is
It's
no.
not.
Wait, hang on, stop.
Immigrants can come here illegal and seek asylum. They could cross the border and seek asylum. They're given that, even as an illegal.
Yeah, but he didn't do that, by the
Right.
way.
That's not what he did.
No, he did do. He did when
Oh no,
No,
he
he
did.
did not.
He did that. He did that.
Yes.
He did that after
That's why the judge
fact.
never ruled that he was a gang member.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you something, right? The question I have for you, being a captain, right? Being in law enforcement many years, right? It seems like as long as we can identify, right, the guy is bad, you don't care about the process. You like, he's bad anyway, so let's just get him the hell out of here.
So what I'm saying. Go ahead.
No.
Because it's bringing me back to a case that I was involved in one time.
Go ahead, Joe. I lost you.
Okay, you there now?
Yeah, you're saying that as long as we determine he's bad, then
right. Okay. Because look, I was part of an attack unit. Right. We was watching this car come out of the projects, and we knew something happened, but we wasn't 100% sure. So we waited for a traffic violation. The unit stopped him that was in front of me. So they get him out the car. All of a sudden, now they want to do a sweep of the car. It was a traffic infraction. You had no hardcore evidence of anything that he done wrong, but more of a hunch. Like, yeah, I know the guy's pretty dirty, right? One of the guys popped his glove box open, right? And inside the glove box, it was an 8-ball of coke, right? So the glove box was locked, and he popped it open. That's the no-no, right?
Yeah.
So we went to court, and I told the officers, don't subpoena me to this particular case. Don't subpoena me to this case because I know what the fuck you did. And he was like, yo, come on. I said, I'm not doing that. It was like, he's a dirtbag anyway. You're going to let him go for a technicality?
No. Yeah.
And I said, yo, I'm not doing that. What they do, they subpoena me to court. I was hoping they didn't put me on the stand, right? Why they put me on the stand? And they asked me, they was like, oh, so was the glove box locked when I actually searched the car? And I said, I pulled on it and it appeared locked to me. Another officer came behind me. All of a sudden, the glove box opened. He pulled out an 8-ball of coke and they dismissed the case. The officer was mad. The judge called me in the back. He said, look, that was fucking honorable. He says, I know you guys be lying to get the bad guy. He says, and you keep standing on that. He said, you ever have, in my courtroom, I'm telling you, I appreciate your honesty. He says, because I know you guys be lying. I know it. But the notion is, if the bad guy is bad, then, you do what you got to do to get him off the street.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I don't believe that. I agree with you. But here's the thing that that's not even a relative. You can't even compare that because I'm saying he gets arrested. The guy gets arrested. He's determined by ICE that he's here illegally.
Nobody has a problem with that. Nobody's arguing with that.
That's what I'm saying. Once you make that determination and he's violated the law, he's not going to go. They're not going to hold him until a court date. They ship him off and they deport him. That's how it works. Once they make the determination they're illegal in itself, they get deported.
Listen. Are you disagreeing with what they said? There's a few I's that wasn't dotted, some T's that wasn't crossed.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But at the same time, was it a federal judge that said that put the hold on him?
It was a federal judge put a hold on him, and he also said he could not tell him to be a gang member.
Hold on, is that correct?
Yes.
Dave, is that correct?
I think it was I believe it was an immigration judge. I'm not 100% sure. So there was a court order, and they should have followed that order. But I don't think they litigate. In fact, they didn't litigate the issue of his gang membership or not. That was a non-issue. The only issue here is did they follow the right process to kick this guy out? And on that issue, no, they didn't.
I agree with you.
No,
I agree with you.
So technically, if El Salvador agrees, put him back in a plane, go before the judge, say, okay, your claim for asylum is hereby
I
denied.
think that
Gone.
was the basis of our conversation.
Yes.
No, I agree with that. I
I
agree
don't-
with that. But I
Hey,
don't think that's the basis of the conversation. I think
think
that
so.
I
really
don't think that's the basis of the conversation, Joe. I think the work that there's a divide where it just gets manipulated to where, you know, certain people they want to make out as poster, you know, like they're the
You're missing the point, Chris. We would even when Mitch got on, the first thing he said was it wasn't a correct deportation. He didn't get his due process, right? That's the first thing he jumped on and said. And I said my opening statement, right? I'm all for getting them out if the proper channels was correct. We all just sat here and said no, they were not. I think that was the basis. That's not us here using him as the poster child of the argument. That we're talking about
And,
what's done correctly.
he's
and
deported.
you don't apply due process only when the person is considered to be perfect or super innocent. Due process is due process. Whether you
Yeah, but
like the person
I
or
think
not, we're
Mitch,
talking about the concept of due process.
right. I think Mitch, this was an administrative error. No one did this deliberately. I'll tell you why I
Yeah,
know that
it
and why I
was done
believe it.
deliberately because they photoshopped tattoos on his
No, no,
That
no.
tattoo.
There
that
you
that
go.
has
Because
nothing to do with it.
they wanted to
No,
negative stamp,
that no.
right, to paint this guy as a criminal. So yes, it was deliberate. After they made the mistake, they wanted to paint him as a super criminal, so that therefore people can get
No.
wait,
lost in the
wait, wait,
sauce
wait.
around
Hold on, hold on. Wait a
whether you
second.
should support
Okay.
due process or not.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So you're still going back to this Photoshop thing, which is let's put that to the side for a moment. Are you saying that there was some HSI agent or some immigration officer who looked at this guy and said, you know, he's got a judge's order directing that he not be deported. I don't care. Put him on the plane. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what happened. Yes,
And because you're big on presenting evidence, please give me the evidence to show that is that is even remotely true.
that's in the reports. That's in the report. They gave a stay order. He was already on the plane. They asked him to turn that plane around and bring him back to
Well,
America.
time out, time out. That's not what I
Donald Trump
said.
refused to do so.
That's not what I said. I said when they put that guy on the plane, are you saying that there was some cop someplace who said, Garcia, yeah, he's got an order not to deport, but I don't care. Put him on the plane.
You want me to find the individual that done it? I don't
I
know.
want you to give me
The
even.
administration as a whole is guilty of violating his due process.
Wait, hold
Whether
on.
he's
I
whether
didn't.
he's a criminal or whether he's a saint, due process is due process.
But I'm not. You're missing the question I asked you. The
I'm not
question
sure where
is
you're going with the question. You're asking for
because
I'm telling you, as an administration as a whole, they dropped the ball. The
Well,
administration as a whole is guilty.
dropping the ball
The
is a
administration as
mistake.
a whole is the evidence that they did not follow
Dropping the ball
the
is a
due process.
mistake. Dropping the
Hey,
ball is a mistake, not dotting your I's and crossing your T's, so to speak. That's not evidence that it was malicious intent to ship him off
I
regardless
don't
of
know if it's I don't know if anyone is evil or malicious. I'm
there you
telling
go.
you, if it's an administrative error, then it should be
right.
corrected. And the Supreme Court judge ruling should have been
There's no
followed.
Supreme Court judge ruled.
Which the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that he should be brought back to America, and a stay order should be honored.
Well, I agree. The state order should have been
Oh, okay.
honored.
It should have been
So
honored.
I don't want to argue feelings and if some
But
individual
Well, but
person
that's not. But
was
Mitch, that's
malice or not. I'm just saying that a mistake was made,
right.
and they have the opportunity to correct it. But I don't think even if you two were in the decision making position that you would correct it because um, respectfully, you feel like as long as you're guilty or halfway guilty, then you should not have any rights in this country.
Then
oh,
you're not listening to what I'm
yeah.
saying because I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there is pursuant to law a different standard for people who are here as illegal
That's
as
not what the
illegal aliens.
Constitution says.
That's
That's not what the Constitution says.
Constitution says you're entitled to due process. Does not define due process. Due process is different depending on your circumstance. So, like I said, okay. you're a border agent and you see someone just swimming across the Rio Grande. You say, "Hey, listen, yeah, I'm
Now
gonna
we're
put you on a
going through
boat, send you
hypothetical.
back." No, but yeah, but I'm saying, but there's no due process there, right? There's no due process. If you were an American citizen, there's due
I
process.
don't know what the protocol for an immigration agent seeing someone, swimming across the water. I don't know what the process is for that. I understand the process very clearly in this scenario because there were so many. The federal judge was involved. The Supreme Court judge was involved.
After
This
the
was
fact, this is all
litigated in
after
the
the
public,
fact.
and it was very clear that his due process was not honored correctly. And you even said so yourself.
Yeah, no,
No, no,
no,
it should
you
be.
like, okay. So, Mitch, all I'm saying is this one guy. There's no way that they took this guy in defiance of the court order. Someone made a mistake. So after the fact, the
That's correct.
plane is already in the air. So you're saying a trial judge saying turn that plane around and expect it to actually like boom, it happens.
It's
Are
El
you kidding
Salvador.
me?
It's El Salvador. Donald Trump wanted to. We just shipped in South Africans from South Africa recently, right? We just imported immigrants from South Africa, right? We have the ability
Yeah.
and power and influence. It's the greatest country in the world with all the resources at our disposal. If we wanted if we wanted this gentleman back in this country, we would do so.
But
Anybody agree with that?
no, I think that Trump could put more pressure on the El Salvadoran president for sure. But the El Salvadoran president can say, "I'm sorry, he's in." By the way, who has jurisdiction over that guy now? El Salvador, 100% El Salvador. It's not like, well, you guys made a mistake, so I'm going to ship one of my citizens back to the U.S.
And there's
Hey,
ways,
Dave.
there's
Hey,
ways to
Dave.
enforce your influence. You can cut off aid. You don't have to invite the El Salvador president to the White House and give him a welcoming mat,
That's
right?
right. That's
You
right.
can have a conversation, right? Just like he's traveling, doing tours to Saudi Arabia and to Syria, right? And better relations across the world. So to say that Donald Trump is powerless in this scenario is just
Nobody
being
said
very
that.
No one
disingenuous,
said that.
right? So
I'm saying
he
he's
may
not
not
going to go out
have.
on a limb to bring this guy back. That's what I think. It's like, okay, I'm gonna bring him
Well,
back.
I
It'll
think
cost
we
$1
should go on
million.
a limb.
We'll bring
It's
him
not,
back on the
but it's
shipment.
not, but it's not going on a limb for him. It's going on a limb for due process.
Yeah, that's some,
See,
okay. I'll
think
go with
we
you a
have.
little bit on that one.
I think we. It's hard for us.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to understand due process if the person is considered to be a criminal, right? We only understand due process if the person's like has a very very clean,
Right.
squeaky clean
No,
background, and then we
Adam.
understand
No,
it.
it's not. That's not true. That's not true.
That's what it.
You could,
That's what
if
it
you're
appears to be.
no, if you due process is due process, but it's different
I
depending on
think
your
your tune.
status
I
here.
think if this guy was an accountant, a lawyer, a
I
CPA, a
think,
doctor, just a average Joe Blow that didn't have any record, I think your conversation would be a lot differently now.
not if
Is the accountant here legal or illegal?
not if he's illegal.
If
That's
he
right.
came here illegal, I think you have the same. I think you have a different tune
Yeah,
because
not
you wouldn't
illegal.
have these
No,
Photoshop
Mitch. He
tattoos and
goes
his. You
again
wouldn't
with
have
the
these
Photoshop
Photoshop
tattoos.
because
You know,
you wouldn't have these Photoshop tattoos to hinge your argument on. You wouldn't
You know,
have the
I'm not
fact that he
hinging my
beat his
argument.
wife to hinge your
It's your
argument on.
argument, Mitch.
It's no, it's not mine. It was the president's argument, not mine.
it's
I wouldn't
not
even be
the president.
talking about it if it wasn't for the president.
But it's irrelevant to the
No,
issue.
No,
What
I,
if
I
it's
get.
irrelevant? Then why did the president use it?
Joe.
I have no idea. It's a question you can address him, but legally, it's not the issue.
I don't. It's so
No,
mind-boggling.
no,
Nobody can for the fact that he's illegal. They just discard that every time, and it's in every scenario.
Chris,
Liberal.
Chris, you're arguing the wrong point. Not whether he is a criminal, not whether he is illegal. We're talking about the process. It was the process followed. Was the process followed? That's what we're talking about.
There's
The
nothing to
process
argue.
was followed correctly.
There's
And you
nothing
guys
to argue.
that
They
Joe,
agree.
Joe,
They
gentlemen,
agree.
I have to log off. I'm sorry to take off, but I
It was
appreciate
fun though, Mitch.
I appreciate spirited
The debate.
discussion and debate. And so, Joe, thanks for having me.
thanks, Mitch. I appreciate
I
you
think it's
coming
a
on.
great discussion. I love to come back, and I love having discussion, especially with maybe with a panel that we may not agree, right? Because it does give me more insight and more perspective, whether we agree or disagree, right? I mean, you listen to other people's opinions and different angles of things can all make us better. So hopefully,
Yeah.
we can
But we
figure
do
this
agree.
out.
We do agree on some things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I appreciate
Yeah.
having me.
And this was good. I appreciate you, Miss, for joining me. Of course, I'm gonna invite you back.
Thanks a lot,
Um,
Joe. I appreciate it. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, gentlemen.
Did you guys notice that the pictures get a lot clearer the fewer people you have up here? Oh, now that's
yeah,
bad again.
probably the whip band, right?
Yeah,
You're probably right. Yo,
yes,
we're gonna wrap
family.
this up. Yo, I appreciate it. It was a real good conversation. I like how we kept it on the respect level. Everybody was respectful. I just think, right, that when we narrow it down, right, to the actual problem was the due process. I think we all agreed that the I's wasn't dotted and the T's wasn't crossed by far. And everybody agreed if the guy was one of the worst of the worst, like the president is displaying, he's pretty much saying, look, we're going to get him out of here. He's illegal, we're going to get him out of here. Nobody had a problem with that. I think where the disagreement came in at, and we couldn't prove it. We couldn't prove what Mitch was saying, whether it was intentional, and we couldn't prove what they were saying, and Chris was saying it was a mistake. That's all subjective. We don't know behind the scenes what happened. All we do know is that we had some clerical errors, and it could have been one way or another. Trump could have said, I don't care, he's a piece of shit anyway, let's get him out of here. Or it could have been, damn, we forgot to fucking dot that I, dot that T. He's over there now.
But you know, Joey, the other thing is when
it could have been either way. At the end of the day, if we go get him, bring him back, dot the I square C, he's still being shit.
Yep. No, but just think about logistics.
That's what it boils down to.
Just think about logistics, okay? So the plane is up in the air, and the judge is contacted, and he says, "Hey, listen, you got to turn that plane around." Let's say I wanted to turn. I'm the assistant U.S. attorney in that courtroom. What do I do? Get on the hotline to the captain of the plane? No. I've got to say I got to go to my boss. Boss, this is what the judge just said. They're like, how do we do that? Okay, get immigration on the phone. Okay, you got. I'm a GS. I got to talk to my SAC. I got to talk to headquarters. Headquarters may finally. The guy's already off the plane. He's already in his orange jumpsuit by the time that's done.
No, so much had to take place for that to happen. I get it.
It was unrealistic.
Yes. Hey, listen, audience. It was good. This was one that you guys said you wanted more than just police brutality. This was a good conversation. I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you guys just understood. Just open your mind a little broad. You understood the police culture. You understood party mega mindset. You understood a lot. You understood a whole lot. Keep sending the videos, and if you guys want to join the panel and do exactly what Mitch did, kind of challenge him, push back on whatever the topic is, you're more than welcome. Send me a DM. Like I said, if you got a gripe with the police, please take it to the courtroom. Do not argue on that side of the road. You will lose every day, all day on that side of the road. This platform is for education, and one of the main things that we want to push, we want everybody to get home, not just the officers. But when I was on the police department, all we heard was, we got to get home, we got to get home. I'm going to push it a little further than that. We want you guys to get home too. So whatever gripe you have, take it to the courtroom, get home safe to your family, and I'll see you next time.